First, the different types of anxiety. There's a big difference between panic attacks and basic anxiety as to the way it's approached. A really big difference. When people are fragile, you have to be really careful with sound. I had panic attacks years ago, so I know. You can't, I mean, you got to be really careful. I mean, even a crystal bowl can be too much, right? Whereas with somebody that's just got common anxiety, you know, and they're not fragile, you can do like a gong. A gong could kill somebody with a panic attack, right? So you have to be really careful with panic attacks versus other types of common anxiety. Right? So I put there's occasional. Looks like someone's edited this. Okay, occasional anxiety and common anxiety, then situational, and then I put, you know, people that are fragile versus people that are much stronger, and then I put astral, and what I mean by that is people that are tuning into all the anxiety on the planet, right? What Danielle or any other doctor or any other psychotherapist or anybody, what other types of anxiety might we add to this? Just unmute and no? Did we get them all?
Maybe OCD?
OCD? Okay.
Existential.
What's that mean?
Existential.
What's that mean?
Just a generalized, well, let me think if I can find a better way to describe it. Go on and I'll.
Okay, Michelle?
I'm thinking the bipolar.
Yeah, but that's really not, that's really getting into other areas that we're going to cover later.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, even OCD might be a really specific type.
Yeah. Bipolar and obsessive compulsive are not considered under general anxiety disorders.
Okay,
really,
yeah,
they're more.
take those off
Yeah.
now. We'll go over them later when we get into other psychological issues. Okay, well, I guess we got the basics here, right?
KL also was saying social anxiety.
Social anxiety. Okay, very good. Excellent. Okay. Cool.
David, just in terms of the target audience, you might consider changing the word astral to environmental or.
Excellent, thank you.
Yeah.
You gotta keep me from getting too woo-woo here. I'm talking about not being woo-woo, and I'll throw in woo-woo. So you guys gotta reel me in. Thank you.
Yeah, that was my question. Are you looking for what a holistic practitioner would see as different types of anxiety, or what the medical establishment would consider different types of anxiety?
Either. And the whole point of this is to whether we should do different treatments for different aspects. Right, yeah, that's the whole point. So anything that can differentiate the treatments would be important.
Yeah, I think in the traditional Western medicine, the commonly anxiety is generalized anxiety disorder.
Is this covering people who just have like a running baseline of anxiety, sort of a low-grade anxiety baseline?
Yeah, well, that would be generalized, but I mean, so you can have situational, which is not all the time, occasionally, right?
We've pretty much covered the 5 major groups. Anything other than this would be a subgroup of each of those major groups.
Okay, cool. I think that's good. That's all really. I mean, you know, examples is feelings of fear, dread, fear of death is a big one. A lot of people, spiritual leaders, say the fear of death is the core aspect of anxiety, which is really interesting, but I don't know if we're going to go there. Overthinking, denial, distraction, resistance can create adrenal fatigue and pain, but those are side effects. Right?
Can I ask a question?
Uh-huh.
Has anyone done any kind of lit search, like exploring what is already out there? I mean, to start from ground zero feels like our resources and experiences could be used, I mean, to hone things down. You know, when you're developing a clinical trial, which we've done, there's a whole process, there's a procedure, there is.
We're not doing the clinical trial yet.
No, I know, but you can't, I mean, even for the conversation as to what to research and how, and the methodology that you're going to use and the measurements that you're going to use, you're going to have to write a background search anyway. In order to move forward, you're going to have to start creating this lit search that hones in what you're looking for, why you're measuring and using a certain measurement, because it's based on other research. I mean, it'll build a stronger study.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Very good. Thank you. I think, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, I was going to say, I actually have a bunch of stuff already pulled up and ready to share.
Okay.
I'm a music therapist. That it's all very much research based. So there's tons of stuff. I mean, it's not tons. There needs to be more specifically about music and reducing anxiety, but they've got it with operations, just going to the doctor. I mean, there are several things with actual, quantitative and qualitative measurements that are acceptable in the medical field, that we can follow those protocols and build off of those.
Yeah.
So
this is what we need. Absolutely.
And I'd also add that a lot of the research that's already happening right now, they don't necessarily address the variables that we're talking about. The intention, the key, the pitch, the difference between music therapy, therapeutic music, and sound therapy. I mean, there's all of these categories that are emerging. And I feel like we all can bring something to that conversation that isn't happening yet, because we can analyze what's there from a different perspective.
Good. Yeah, that's what we talked about from the beginning, is to have you guys, and that was actually the homework for today, was to actually come up with all of the details of what this issue is about and what has been done already, right? So yeah, we definitely, let's any way that anybody can help bring that in, send it to me and we'll include it here. Okay.
David, some people are having trouble seeing the document. Can you make it a little bigger on the screen or enlarge the text?
Let's see. Zoom.
also, I don't know if other people have had issues with the new Google Doc that you shared in the last email. I don't have access. So, because I wanted to put stuff in there.
The Google Doc, I didn't give anybody access because we were still editing it. Yeah, so there's been no access.
Okay.
And we're going to set it up so that people can do edits, but they'll be in color so that we can clean up.
Oh, good. I'm glad you have
I wanted to go through it before we actually let people mess with it. Right?
I just wanted to make sure I wasn't doing something wrong on my end.
Cool. Okay, so here's the causes of anxiety. And we'll just begin with this. It can be stress, traumatic events, stressful circumstances. Now with panic attacks, what I believe is that you have stressful circumstances that happen over a period of time, and they build up cortisol and different chemicals in the body. And so even if you do and go to a place of peace and mellowness, it still takes a while for those chemicals to actually clear. Because I remember when I could get into full bliss, and then the next morning all of a sudden there's like in my stomach there's this like right. There's also stressful illness, alcohol. I found that if I just drank alcohol, 2 days later I would have a panic attack. So I stopped drinking alcohol completely. Right. Drug addiction can do it, of course. Can be hereditary. There's substance abuse and depression. There's solar flares can even cause problems, some people say, right?
Yeah, I have that.
Yeah, and earthquakes. I mean, I had major panic attack right during the 1986 earthquake. I had to go to the hospital, right? Astrology, we won't get into that. and certain personality types are more prone.
Could you add electromagnetic fields?
Oh,
Or
yeah, I
would you-
didn't say that. Oh, yeah,
No,
absolutely.
that's
Yeah,
so-
electromagnetic.
even let's say, 5G versus whatever. I mean, just I guess that would go into the electromagnetic
Uh-huh.
forces.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, it's huge.
Yeah.
I think
Or
it's
you
probably
could-
one of the biggest ones.
But that's environmental, so we've
Yeah,
captured the
I was going
environmental.
to say that. You could
Yeah,
include
well-
that and astrology with environmental, and you save
Okay.
yourself some problems with it.
Okay, so we'll put category of environmental and put these under there.
The thing about environmental is some of the things that happen naturally through geology, and the thing that is electromagnetic, it is also a naturally occurring in the earth, but it's also something man-made. So I don't think it's just a subset of environmental.
Yeah. And I agree that a lot of the stuff is like, for instance, now with Elon Musk putting all those satellites out there and stuff, it's causing a lot more, it's going to be more bright for us and stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on there that can impact our anxiety and just our moods.
I'd like to comment that when it comes to dealing with Western medical providers, almost all of this is not going to be seen as a cause because they tend to be very focused on this being an imbalance of chemicals in the brain.
I agree.
Actually, no, I don't.
Wait, can I finish my point before you interrupt? Hey, wait, can I finish my point? Can I finish my point?
Yeah, but
Thank
I have
you.
to tell you.
No, can I finish what I have to say first? Thank you. Everybody's getting all excited. Just calm down. I do acknowledge that there are some medical providers that don't think like this, but I think it would be fair to say that the vast majority of mainstream thinking, at least in America, is that this is brain chemicals. And let me tell you, I have gotten people very upset, even in my yoga therapy training, by suggesting that you could get over anxiety and depression without medicine. And those were yoga teachers. So this mindset that it's in the brain is very, very deeply embedded. That said, now I'm an Ayurvedic practitioner. In Ayurveda, it's often caused by diet and lifestyle. So we could potentially say to people who are focused on this brain model that diet and lifestyle can impact that and make that something that we can discuss with them. But it has to be, depending on the provider, we have to be very careful because there's this big pushback even among people who are in yoga and tradition, in more holistic things. They want to buy into this idea that they're victims of their brain, and they get very upset if you tell them they can control it without their medication. So I just wanted to point that out.
Go ahead, Danielle, because I think once we have the data to really show that something really works profoundly, that's not going to be a big problem. But go ahead. What were you going to say, Danielle?
Yeah, I mean, I think from my practice and like the movement in medicine now, I mean, so many lectures right now are on gut microbiome. We know that maybe depression with serotonin or epinephrine, that's different. But with anxiety, we're trying to get away from prescribing drugs. Like we're trying to go to mind-body medicine, acupuncture, anything except drugs. I mean, we're trying not to prescribe benzodiazepines. So I don't know, there's such a reputation of Western medicine. It gets frustrating, but I know I am a little bit different, but I know for my colleagues, like we don't look at the brain for anxiety. We do look at the whole body. So I'm sorry if I'm getting defensive.
I'm on the East Coast here. I'm on the East Coast here, and it is like a different world from California. And I spent a lot of time.
I did my training in New York City.
It doesn't matter. There's no argument here. Let's just move forward.
May I make a suggestion, David? It's Shannon.
Yes, Shannon.
And it's related. So what came to mind for me, and I'm thinking of the work of a colleague of mine, Dr. Joe Delaney in the UK, but there's a way, and maybe the doctors can think of a way of saying this, but essentially when physiology hacks psychology. So when people have heart rate, radical heart rate for another reason, or breathing difficulties for other reason that cause the incoherence that create, I don't know what that's called aside from physiology hacking psychology, but I don't know. Dr. Joe Delaney's work has reminded me. I don't know what you guys, psycho.
So, okay, I'd like to take a little break here and because Forrest is here now. Yeah, Forrest is here. So, hi, Forrest.
Hello, good to be here. Thank you. Hi, David.
Hey, welcome. Thank you so much for coming and helping. So, what we're looking at is, you know, if we come up with treatment plans or technologies, especially, who's going to get compensated for this? Especially if we come up with something major where there's all of a sudden we're making $1 billion in the research foundation here. I would like to compensate everybody because I never built this to try to make money, this whole system. It was all about how many people we could help. And Forrest has been studying how to set up systems like this in detail. The main concern I have is, first of all, being fair as to who is going to be compensated for, you know, I mean, the amount of contribution that people put in, and to be able to actually figure that out. The other aspect I'm concerned about is, yesterday I had somebody that said, oh, we got these technologies that are get rid of anxiety majorly, and we'd like to come to the meeting. And I said, well, is your technology proprietary? And they said, oh yeah. And I said, oh, because, you know, if someone goes off and takes the ideas from the meeting, I don't want to stop that. I would like things to proliferate, right? So we can help as many people as possible. But if anybody has been brainstorming and coming up with and spending time coming up with ideas, I think they should be compensated for it, right? Even if we actually then come up with a whole research project that creates a product that actually gets FDA approval, that we get FDA approval, and then we bring it into hospitals, that, you know, there's going to be people that are going to be working on that project that will be paid, right? But there's also the people that came up with the ideas and contributed in the first place. So with that, we had come up with, you know, different levels of contribution. There's the members, the contributors, and the creators. So the whole tricky part is how to delineate between those people. And I think we're thinking about the amount of time they put in, but also we would vote as to what level different people would be for different projects. Does that make sense for us? Yeah. Tell us about what you do.
Yeah,
we don't have too much time.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you. So basically, over the last many years, one of the things I've been aware of being part of many different startups is the challenge of being able to have right balance between, just very much like David is talking about. And so one of the things that I came across through a period of working with a number of different organizations and then launched our own using the same model in 2018, and since then a few others, is a legal entity type that mashes together several features. And the goal is to create a balanced, equitable, thriving human ecosystem. So that's kind of the frame of which my thinking is. And so here's some of the mechanics of that. So the first thing is there is a type of legal entity that is a legal blend between a nonprofit and a for-profit within one entity type. That's called an L3C, or a low profit limited liability company. It can be set up in 14 states right now. We chose Wyoming. And once you're set up in one state, you can operate anywhere. So here's why that's distinct. One is that it has a 501c3 primary purpose, meaning its primary purpose is for social good. Because its primary purpose is for social good, it falls on the spectrum that is close enough to being considered a full nonprofit, that you're allowed to have volunteers and you're allowed to have pro bono services to support the organization and to access many of the resources made available to nonprofits. That does not include standing alone and having tax deductibility, but because you have a social good as a primary purpose, getting tax deductibility through a alignment with a 501c3 is very easy to achieve. So I'm going to just put that on the side, and that's the nonprofit side of this equation.
And we do already have the nonprofit, of course. This is the Sound Healing Research Foundation. So we can tie
Perfect.
that
So,
in with
so
it. Yeah.
Right. So you have all those advantages already there. On the second side is it's a LLC or a limited liability company. And as a limited liability company, you can shape it, if you will, by agreement into whatever type of form of LLC that one might desire. And the type that I'm very aligned with is what's called a multi-stakeholder cooperative. So what that means is that you always in a multi-stakeholder, most always, and certainly always for me, within a multi-stakeholder cooperative, one of those classes of ownership, in addition to the classes that David proposed as possible there, is a workers class. And the worker class is basically the class that is doing what's required in order to allow the organization to actually function and work. But in addition to that, you then can have other classes. And then depending upon whatever the agreement is, then the terms of that class as it comes to voting and as it comes to equity distribution and any of the other variables that are chosen are basically then available to be defined class by class. And that's why you have separate classes of organization. Now, one of the challenges that you can run into if you're not thoughtful with a cooperative is governance. And so we spent quite a lot of time looking at, and I highly recommend to anybody that's interested in organizational structure to, if you're not familiar with it, look at, read, download, it's available, the book that's called Reinventing Organizations by Frederick Laloux. And he details in detail why certain types of organizations along the lines of what I'm describing, but not specifically, are outperforming other organizations in their category substantially. One of those features is what's called autonomy. Autonomy means that you put together a design in such a way that every member of the organization understands and has the opportunity to contribute to the decision-making that ends up being made. They either do that via a voted representative that sits on the board or in other kinds of capacities, but the built-in structure allows that to happen. So in order to do that, what we turned around and did is found that there's a type of governance that's called sociocracy. It's not well known here in the United States, but it is it was developed out of the Netherlands over 30 or 40 years ago. It has spread quite a lot. It has a lot of history with it in terms of how to use it effectively. And in the set of documents that I'm making available to the group and David and have for other organizations is a constitution that really defines the entire organization relative to how it operates in circles, how decisions are made, and various components like that. And when we developed it, it took several months, 6 months actually, to develop the first set of the legal documents with this constitution, which is legally tied into the organization. So essentially the goal is you're baking into the DNA of the organization this kind of collaborative but wise structure, somewhat like an ecosystem, because all ecosystems have structure. So those are, and then there's one other main component that we added in that from my experience of working with startups and companies such as this, that I've witnessed often that when starting an organization, people often can put in a tremendous amount of time early on before there's any compensation available, but there's usually no metrics paying attention to that compensation because there's no system for that metrics to pay attention to that in there. And so one of the things that I discovered and we been working with since 2015, and it is built into also the documents of the operating agreement that I'm describing, is what's called P units or profit units. And these profit units then turn around and are a way of basically registering energy that has been invested into an organization in a way that is much, it's not going as far as tokens, which I believe we're coming up in the future that we will have, but it is moving as kind of a bridge. So the P units have these characteristics. One is they're tied to profit. That means that they're only paid off when there would be profit available. However, the P units take a priority positioning. So what that means is that nobody is going to receive any profits until all of the P units have been paid off. And then that way that it ensures the people that put in the time early actually get compensated before profits go to others. Second feature is that each one of those is valued at $1. The third feature is that if you hold it longer than a year, then it starts generating interest. And since this is designed as a social enterprise, if you like nominal interest, you can make it 0, but we make it 2%. And so that way, then now you have a features, and how that is activated in my own organization. What we use is basically independent contractor agreements that turn around and define, just like I would if I was paying cash to somebody, defines what their role and scope or project, what they're working on, whatever that is, whatever the compensation is, whether it's a flat fee or an hourly or salary, whatever that might be, that's defined just like you would if you were paying cash, except it says payable by P units. And then those get logged into the books. Cool. So that's the whole picture of the mashup of the several features. So I'll stop with that, David, for
cool.
Where you.
Yeah, I think that, so we're not going to, so we won't spend too much time on this in the meeting because I really want to get to our treatment plans. I think the main thing we need to put out is we need to create a board of a few people that are the core people to help put this together. So if anybody is interested in doing the work to help get this set up, you can email me and let me know. And then, so we'll have like the 3 or 4 people you talked about for us to do the basic work. And then there'll be like a board that will be the kind of the voting board as well, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, and I would recommend doing it that way for sure. And a great question, and what I didn't do, and I think would be helpful to understand, is there's basically a spectrum of organizations that each have distinct features. So when we look at, I'm going to start with the nonprofit because we're mostly focused on a nonprofit direction. And so a nonprofit 501c3 is social good only. You cannot organize it as a cooperative and you cannot have P units. The L3C I just described, and that's a blend between the two that does allow you to have volunteers and does allow to have pro bono. Jumping over the line, then we go to a B Corp. Now, a B Corp, you still cannot have volunteers, you cannot have pro bono because it violates employee law because it's still primarily focused on making money, though it does include the ability of the board to choose and it commits to choose to take a triple bottom line approach, which means that they're supporting their community and the environment at the same time with some of the money that likely would have been distributed at profit, so it protects them. And then in the last is a normal for-profit company. And what we've dealt with and why the B Corp came into being is 70 years of case law that basically said a company has one purpose only, and that is to enrich the shareholders. And so that's what caused the B Corp to come into play. And then this is one step over, with the big difference being whether you can have volunteers or not, and so on.
Cool. Okay. Any quick questions before we continue?
I have a question, just quickly in terms of, is this just American? Because I know I'm based out of Canada and Montreal and Quebec, and I know there's a lot of people internationally as well on this call, leveraging it just, via an American, I guess every country has its different, you know, regulatory requirements and everything, just from a business perspective of how to set up stuff like this. So I don't know if you wanted to comment on that.
I do have a quick comment, and it's a very, very appropriate and good question. Thank you, Angela. So basically, all I know is US law and that we can do it here. But what I do know in terms of ownership, because it's set up as an LLC, then basically anybody that comes in as an owner, it doesn't, they can be anywhere in the world and be an owner within the company. And this has actually been used, this methodology, to help undocumented workers in the United States to legally and appropriately be able to be paid for their work as an owner within a company without having to have social security number and things of that nature. So yes, it works quite fine. I can't speak to how it might be organized if one wanted to choose to organize it outside of the United States.
Cool. So since we are going to start tracking, you know, time in the meetings and such, and everything, and your contribution, and as we figure out how to do this, so that your P units are going to be based on being able to see your name in the participant list. Right. So, okay. Any other? I think we're good. I think that gives us a good overview. Again, the whole intention here is for it to be fair for anybody that contributes to anything that we come up with, especially if it starts making money, right?
So the one other piece I want to add that's very nice in a cooperative is you have a tremendous amount of flexibility on how you deliver equity within the cooperative structure. And that equity can vary according to the class that they're in, but it is equally applied across everybody within that class. And I have seen things that they've used points and other things that are very nuanced in order to be able to handle the nuances that may be necessary in a given organization. So with that, I'll just say thank you, and I appreciate being brought in. I am so enlivened by the work that you're doing and everything that's happening, and so grateful that you all exist and are moving in the path that you are.
Thank you so much, Forrest.
Take care. Bye.
Excellent. Okay. Back to our document here. Okay. So we now have current medical treatments. I think this is just something that would be really good that people could come up with or include. Is there anything we should add right now that could inform the treatments that we do with sound that's not here? Because this is pretty basic. I mean, we don't have much information here yet. Okay. I mean, it'd be nice. You know, what we should also look at besides psychotherapy is music therapy. It would be really nice for you music therapists to get a full list of what is done now in music therapy, right? And that way we can look at not reinventing the wheel and just like adding to that. Yeah, Michelle?
Yeah, how about biotherapy? Is that what am I saying it right? Like brain paint, the kinds of therapies that they do have sound and images that affect your brain and reduce PTSD and all kinds of other.
That biofeedback?
Biofeedback, thank you.
Biofeedback, okay. Yeah, there's the whole brain area that we'll get into as well. Cool.
There is also movement therapy, David.
I'm sorry, say again?
Movement therapy.
Oh yeah, movement. Okay, cool. Great. Okay, cool. Yeah, if anybody, if you guys can help fill in these areas, if you have information on that, that would be really helpful. Excellent. Okay, so for intake questions, these are just the intake questions that students have come up with over the last 10 years. We can add in, we can add in, you know, the questions that we already mentioned earlier. The main thing one thing we talked about in our degree class is you have to be really careful when you start asking these questions, because some people aren't open to it. And so you have to develop trust, and you have to really develop a connection first, because some people aren't open. But also, if somebody's like having panic attacks weekly or in the last month, you have to be really careful about asking too many questions, especially questions about what it's like when they have the attack. You can totally trigger a panic attack when you're just by describing it. I know. So you really have to be very careful. So if someone's like really fragile, having panic attacks a lot, or even in anxiety during the meeting, during the treatment, then you might not even ask these questions at all. I remember when I was having panic attack, that for anybody to ask me any question just made me really upset. I thought, I'm already stressed out. Now you're wanting me to have to think, which is way stressful, right? Even more stressful. So you have to be really careful with that. And no matter their response, no judgment, loving kindness with whatever they're saying, right? Then we got full range of intake questions. What's going on with you on all different levels here? Somebody said, may I have permission to work with you? Okay. What are the stressors going on in your life? Right?
Hello, David.
Uh-huh.
Yes. Hi, I just wanted to add something. Hello, everyone. I was thinking that a way to also meet them where they're at, because it is a very sensitive place to meet people with anxiety, would maybe also include meditation. Like
you mean starting off? Yeah, so you're talking about the treatment now instead of the intake questions?
Well, you were talking about different ways, so music therapy and movement therapy, and I was wondering if meditation can also something to
yeah, we have for the treatments, we have different meditations to do. If that's what you're talking about, for including meditation as one of the treatments? Or are you saying something else? Okay. Yeah.
The points that we just passed, I'm not trying to go forward. I was maybe going a little backwards, actually.
Go backwards as far as what you mean, what people do for meditation?
Above where you have a list of above intake questions, you have the list: psychotherapy, music therapy, biofeedback. She was talking about adding the meditation, which is
meditation and
like John Kabat-Zinn's already accepted in the hospital, MSRB, or mindfulness-based stress reduction.
Mindfulness, that's what I was trying to
MSRB.
Okay, cool. Excellent. Okay. Okay, so
is the aspect of trauma therapy slash especially somatic based therapies for anxiety definitely now are becoming a very strong ally in that department.
Cool. Okay, great. I'm sure there's a lot more here that could be really can inform what we're doing as well. Okay, so then we have all the different stressors, and then music and sound. What type of music do you like? Do you like to sing? Are you a musician? Do you play any instrument? Have you done any sound healing or sound healing events? Are you okay to make sound? If you have any others to throw in here, just pipe up and we'll drop them in. Okay. What personal remedies? What activity? What helps, right? That you do already. What activities do you enjoy? What really makes you happy and feeds your soul? When you visualize a safe place, where does your mind go? What's your favorite activities? Do you have a spiritual practice? Do you have any current self-care practices? Do you have a creative outlet? Do you have a support system? Right? I should say just basic. What helps the most? Now, that you do. Right?
Can I add one more question in there?
Uh-huh.
What do you want?
Yeah. So
this is the only
that's
question.
called,
And what do you need?
What do you want? What is your desired outcome?
That's cool, you know, because when we talk about this in class, it's like when you can really have the goal of where you're headed and be clear on that, then it's hard to get anywhere until you can visualize it. And I think that's key. Very good. Okay, history. What was your childhood like? Were there chaos, you know, feel safe growing up? Have you experienced any traumatic events? Is there a big event that started your anxiety? How long have you had this issue? Does anyone in the family have anxiety? You know, this is just the beginning. It's all to be refined, you know, so if people come up, have lists of questions that are more definitive, that are, you know, shorter, you know, we'll definitely include them. So we're just beginning. Does anyone in the family have anxiety? When is it you find yourself getting most anxious, and how long does it last? What's the main trigger? Is there anything that makes you feel calm? How do you try to deal with your anxiety? What things most stress you out? You feel able to step outside the stressors? How does sound and music affect your condition? Do you notice any connection to electromagnetics? Is that good? Permission.
David, just a couple of things, because I think that there's a lot of stuff happening in the chat, and I'm not sure if someone's monitoring that.
I am. I was gonna.
Oh, great. Awesome. Thanks. And then the other thing is, I see that you're adding, you know, specific questions as people ask them, but we will have a place, right? So like I've pulled up, like John Hopkins has like their list of questions. These are tested.
Yeah,
you know,
yeah, that's what we talked about in the beginning. Absolutely.
Right. So I'm pulling all of these things up, but I guess, do you want me to just make that list now and add them when we have access to the document?
Well, you
later?
can just email me if it's a big list. That's the easiest way to do it. And we'll get them
I will
in there.
email you. Great.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
And then what we're going to do, you know, is after we morph this and add things to it and change it, then we're going to have it posted so people can edit it. But it's not that you can, I mean, it's going to be tracking will be turned on so we can see where you've edited it. So we can ultimately get a more definitive and maybe cleaner and better list. Although it's nice to have a lot of questions because some people resonate with more some questions than the others. Okay, you know, we got the somatic questions. You know, where would you say it is in the body? How does it manifest? Okay, any pain? Okay, and then the intuitive questions, which I really like. What do you think is going on behind this? If anxiety could talk, what would it say? Do you know deep inside what causes it? Do you feel that anxiety is caused by physical or emotional issues? Have you considered what this is teaching you? What are you learning? What is it trying to protect you from? Do you consider yourself empathetic? If you had all the free time in the world, what would you do? And what would your magic life be like?
Should I go through a couple of comments that people put in the chat?
Yeah. Please.
So Shannon had put earlier that in qualitative research, the question design is important so as not to limit the scope of potential information in the reply or to bias the perspectives.
Oh.
And
so we're talking about the research instead of the intake questions, or is it relate to these intake questions?
Well, I think she's just pointing to the way the question is designed to elicit, you know, the reply.
Yeah,
that
research questions are quite different than the intake questions. But, yeah, cool.
And then Amy is saying, suggesting finding a standardized intake questionnaire for specific disorders.
Yeah. I think standardized is I like standardized is not going to include questions about sound, and it may not, you know, so I like to actually add, I mean, the intuitive questions, I'm not completely convinced that the system that's out there is perfect at all, right? So I'm really interested in adding to it any way we can.
I think what she meant or they meant was that we're creating a standard questionnaire for the different intake needs. So the diagnosis or the different causes, reasons that that specific person is receiving treatment, we would standardize that. Is that, am I hearing that correctly? Like that's what was meant by that question or by that?
So
that's not how I interpret other.
Just initially, I would just suggest looking at the standardized intake questions and the research questions to get a framework.
Yeah, no, I absolutely.
No, hold on a second. Hold on a second.
Absolutely, I'm agreeing.
Use them in your study design, because otherwise you're not going to have the validation, and people are going to poke holes everywhere. Meet them where they are, and then perhaps add an additional questionnaire to expand the perception and to maybe go a little bit deeper, but definitely use what's there that's already been standardized, it's already been tested, and it's already been agreed upon within the medical institutions.
Yeah, there's two ways I think this is going to go. And what you just said totally makes sense. If we're going to the psychotherapy board or to doctors, to have that included, I think will bring more credibility, and that really makes sense. But if we're just posting this on the web, then things that really make sense and are really helpful, I think we can adjust it any way we want. If we feel this is the best intake questions to have, that regardless, I think we can. So there's going to be two avenues. One is going to be the total professional avenue where we're going down that line. One is just getting it on our website for practitioners to be able to use it any way they want.
What's the value of using so you're creating a questionnaire for practitioners to use with their clients that will not be admissible or usable in future research? I mean, wouldn't we want to begin with the end in mind?
This is not research. This is questions for clients to use in their treatment. I mean, we're not even talking about
just for self-exploration. Then it's just for self-exploration.
This is for treatment, to do treatments on a person. How to do a treatment on a person.
Okay, so everybody is so individualized. Okay, you're not standardizing any kind of treatment option if you're not using a standardized format.
We're not trying to standardize the treatment option. What I'm seeing, and this is what I've seen from the board, the group that tried to put together a board of sound healing 10 years ago, which were most of our instructors. There are so many different avenues that people believe in. I want to give people all the different avenues and have them choose what works for them instead of trying to standardize it in a certain way. Right now, for the medical side, I think we absolutely have to standardize it, and I think to actually use as much as possible, even with for the practitioners. I think any way we can bring in any of the questions that are standardized already. I mean, people have put a lot of work into figuring those questions out.
Right. So just to be clear, using these kinds of questions that are just created for the practitioner, then the person who is receiving the treatment, they are becoming their own control. Here's their here's their intake measurements, here's the treatment, and then here's their control. I mean, here's their post measurements. So they are their own control.
We're not measuring. This is not, I think that's the confusion.
Yeah.
But you can.
There's one avenue we're doing is just to create treatment plans that people can use. No research.
Like, we'll get there is what he means. We'll get there.
Yeah, the other aspect is to go down the research. So we're doing two different areas. So this is, so we're not trying to tie this into research yet for the practitioners. So we're doing two things at once, but I just see it's going to split into two different areas, because whenever somebody says we need to do the standard, I think that's cool, but also the standard is not working, and that's why we're here. So I think we do both. We do it for the.
May I say one thing that just kind of ties in those last 2 points that came up in the chat. And with this, I want to thank that conversation, because I felt so many things happening in my body. My heart rate was rising. I was turning on different aspects of my intelligence. And I think that's really the thing that's missing in our Western society. Why do I not go to Western doctors? The first thing, the questionnaire isn't asking me the right questions. Breaks my heart. And that's, I think, the listening that we're being asked to do right now is what really is touching someone from the start of their taking back authentic authority in their life. And how can we serve that? And through those questions, the intake questions, first place. And I think that that first thing that was brought up in the chat speaks to that. That's all. Thank you.
Anything in the chat highlights that you want to share, Dana?
First of all, I just want to say I agree with what Kimberly just said. I find some of these questions so much more relevant than the ones I've seen in standard medicine and psychology. I get so annoyed by some of those questions, the standard questions. Like I just find them like, because they're not asking me the right thing. And they're not, they're like annoying. And I can't answer them accurately either. I mean, I'm not saying all, but I like some of these questions a lot better because they actually target something that.
Well, I think her point is really important though. If we're going to make headway in the medical field, we need to really follow something partially what's out there and maybe add these to it. So I think we're going to do both. I think what has become very clear is there's two different paths here. One is to actually do the research that will be totally accepted, but we're always pushing the limits as much as we can, right? And doing the total treatment plan that are for anybody that wants to use it, and then let them choose what resonates with them. Okay.
So let me keep going with the chat here because there's a lot going on.
Okay.
I'll just say, Carolyn, this might be something to look at later, but she says in human design, there are different anxieties that they have been specified, and I've been researching that could be interesting to share. And then she has a whole list of different types of anxieties that might be something to check out.
That would be cool.
Later.
Share it, and we'll get it in there. That's what we were looking for earlier.
Other people earlier as well have put different links for resources that lead to different questionnaires and other resources out there. So maybe later when you go back to the chat, you can see the links people have put in. Let's see, there's nine messages I have to check here. There's a question. Hold on. Okay, so here's a question. Is this a list we all have to use in completeness, or is this a list we can choose from depending on our specific client treatment? Okay, and if we choose our own questions, how do we get a standard measurement?
Or is it
you're not really measuring?
We just went through that.
Yeah, you're not really measuring. You're just
we're not doing research for the practitioner.
And then Kay is asking, is everyone clear about the purpose of the list that David is currently developing?
Purpose of this list is it started, maybe you weren't here, didn't read. I put it in the email and we actually mentioned it at the very beginning. This is to create two things. One is so we can go to the psychotherapy board, so we can actually go to present this to doctors. One is to actually create treatments, maybe even technologies, and also then to create a whole treatment plan that we can post on the web for people just to learn from. Okay.
And then there's another comment from Shannon. She's noticed in the past that people with sensory sensitivity and heightened empathic resonance are awesome at asking questions and allowing for optimal information to be registered. So same questions, different questionnaire, different results, both for intake, triage purposes, in addition to the research.
Yeah, that's
not quite sure.
What I got from that is that sometimes certain questions may be better for different people, and to be able to tune into which ones work, right? Anything else as far as the questions in there?
Yeah, I would like to add to what you just said, David.
Okay.
Because if we can have sort of a dynamic intake question form, then as people ask questions, hopefully we could steer them towards the questions that are a little bit more appropriate for them. And also, because something to think about too is sometimes people might, especially if they have anxiety, might get really overwhelmed if they're like, wow, there are 50 questions on here.
Yeah, no, that's
right?
what I said right at the beginning.
Yeah, and
Absolutely.
so, but also with the research piece, and I know that, you know, some of us are like, but the research, all of this is research. And also when we start to look at the standardized questions, at least what I would like to see is, what do I think works? What do I think doesn't work, especially with what we're trying to create now? And how, or maybe there's something that just needs to be reframed, how it's being asked.
Well,
right?
this is what's
And
really
to be able
cool
to
is
compare those things with this list.
excellent, because I just realized, you know, as we come up with these questions and people start using them, we can get feedback and say, whoa, these are the questions that are really helpful to, and this is where the focus should be. And these aren't as important, they're cool, but you know, it's like, what questions really help with figuring out the treatment? There's always a component of connection to the client. That's really important. And when someone takes time to ask questions, if they're not too anxious, then that can create the beautiful connection that can be a lot of the healing on its own. Right? Okay, let's go ahead and move forward, because we're now getting into the fun part.
Well, I think this is one little fun part. With what you just said. And Kimberly, I see you. I totally see you, girl. So what if we also guided them a little bit, right? So like earlier when we were talking about sound, like what was the sound for anxiety? Well, I work with a lot of people with anxiety, and breathing is sound, right? So maybe at the very beginning, we can just be like,
Kitty,
very
come on, baby.
and then maybe
Come on,
take
darling.
in a couple breaths
Come.
before you start. Hi, kitty cat. Wants to, so maybe they take a few breaths before they start the questionnaire, right? We guide them through just breathing.
Cool.
Right?
That's cool. I actually have that down lower when we actually do the treatment, but so that would be good. That's what we can do. Absolutely, really good. Okay,
just
let's look at
the questionnaire. Yeah.
Yeah, all I was gonna say was it's really all in how we're doing this, and I'm excited to create all that with you, because as we know, like the sound and vocal technologies that David has, you know, and the organization has already brought forth, we're really going to be paying attention who's administering this assistance and these connections. It's fascinating what's happening.
Cool. Okay, now let's get to the actual treatments. Okay, so if we're focused on the guidelines, the overall conceptualization. There's probably a better word, but I haven't yet figured it out for this section. It's the overall conceptualization of what we're trying to do. So we're not getting into the actual treatment plan yet. So if you have ideas for the treatment plan, that's coming up next. We're just talking about the guidelines for how we're going to do sound treatments. And then I'm really excited to actually open it up and see who here has done really, had really good success, or does something specific that's really good for anxiety. Because that's kind of the coolest thing to access. Okay, so these are the overall basis of how the treatments are created. It's all about, first of all, there's two ways to go. One is to get people peaceful. And that's the best thing that sound does. Just get them calm. Teach them how to get calm later. Figure out the best way to get calm. Get them calm over and over and over so their body relaxes, so that becomes the norm, right? And then the other aspect is transformation. What caused this anxiety in the first place? Let's figure out what caused it in the first place and actually weed that out, right? So those are the two main ways that I have identified so far. So let me talk about the calming first. There's multiple ways you can calm, and you can we'll add into this if you think of something here as we go. Again, we're basing everything on the hierarchy of vibration, which is frequencies, combinations of frequencies, which is timbres or sound, musical intervals, music, and intention. Right? So the first under frequencies, we're talking about coherent versus chaotic frequencies. right? What we're talking about is, instead of chaos, we're talking coherence. And it's really the difference between and all of the coherent frequencies are they're vibrating consistently. And that's what happens in the body as you get this incoherence, which is it's not even vibrating as a frequency, it's chaotic, right? And so that's the beginning when you're talking about frequency. Now there's archetypal frequencies that can be keys that open up certain parts of the body, certain parts of the brain, open up emotions, open up connection to spirit. There's all these, or connection to nature, right? There's also low frequencies tend to be more calming than high frequencies. From the research of Alfred Tomatis, low frequencies calm the body, high frequencies activate the mind. We got to be careful about activation when people are anxious. So that's another component as far as frequency. There's also sound, warm sounds. The harp is known as the warmest. Nylon string instruments, like a nylon string guitar. Things made of wood, like the tongue drum, right? The sansula, that's got a really soft sound, or a handpan that's hit with a hand. It's got a nice warm sound. So, or the warm voice. Oh my God, there is nothing better than a warm voice, right? I mean, warm voice, especially if someone's having a panic attack, warm voice is really the deal. And then a slow fade, like a crystal bowl that fades out slowly and leaves you in that still point, right? So that's the sound component. As far as musical intervals, unison's good. It's very harmonious. Octaves are good. The perfect fifth is the best musical interval that most people talk about for getting to a place of peace, right? There's also the perfect fourth. Stephen Halpern says he uses that a lot because there's no like trying to go back home. You can just float on the musical fourth, right? And then in music, obviously slow rhythms, but I've learned a rhythm that is tuned to a breath. When I do my music, I actually meditate on an intention, and then I notice my breath rhythm, and I set the tempo of the song to my breath. Right? That's really cool when you can, or if you're just playing a bowl or any instrument, to do it to your own breath. It doesn't have to be to their tempo of their breath, or be the best, but just to do it to a tempo of any breath, because if you're peaceful, they're going to get that energy, right? Musical fifth intervals is really nice musically. Dynamics that slowly and smoothly get more calming. This is the curve we're talking about. Slowly over time. So it's like, you're taking from a very fast rhythm, da 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 da. Over 15 or 20 minutes, right? And people really go with you. Smooth, slow change to more and more calm. Yes, Pat?
David, another thing that has an impact is the shape of the music, that it can be in the shape of like a frown face, it could be in the shape of a smiley face, it could be either one of two diagonals, and each one of those shapes has an emotional mood or feel to it. And so
not sure what you mean by shapes. I mean, because there's all the different musical components and there's the overall energy of the flow of the music, but there's different emotions, absolutely, right?
Oh, the shape. For example, if you start high, Native American flute music, many Native Americans will start high and very slowly come down low. And then they go high and they come down low. That's very, very relaxing. Much different than if you start low and you go high, because you're building energy that way.
Yeah, that's
And
what we just
so
showed here.
a song that has a shape like this, you start low, you go higher, and you come back low.
Mountain.
Yes.
Yeah, for people that have serious anxiety, I mean, I found mountains can be good if people can handle it. For people with panic attacks, it's totally just down.
And it might even be straight. That's another line.
Right.
It's just notes that are next to each other, or maybe one note apart, but where the line of it is more straight and stable.
In my book and in the reader, I've actually got all the different dynamics. I could actually, maybe if we have time, I'll pull it up, that create up or down, calming or activating, you know, all the different musical components. So when you get into music, it can get very, very complex. But when you do all of those together as much as possible and energetically, yeah, smooth, slow, fade to peace. Okay, melodies that invoke peace and love. And then intention, of course, love is a good one. There's a lot of intentions because every intention is a stable vibration, but to hold that intention with 100% focus, right? So that no matter what, your intention is to bring love into this anxiety, right? Or whatever your intention is, that it's consistent and stable. It's way more powerful that way. But when you use a universal intention, like, okay, you know, you could be working with a client and say, okay, we're going to bring in love to overcome this anxiety. Let's go to the global level. Let's bring in love for everybody that has anxiety. Let's do this together. Let's do love, an intention of love for everybody on the planet that has anxiety. So now it becomes a more powerful energy. Okay, any thoughts on any of these areas?
I do. Hi again. So I've worked with many, many populations, from children with autism all the way through veterans with PTSD, older adult communities, children in hospitals, adults with severe autism who are nonverbal. So thinking of the nonverbal aspect really matters. And I have had, so in music therapy, the ISO principle is meeting someone where they're at. And I can't remember if it was Caroline, I can't remember who said that earlier, sorry. But the ISO principle is all about meeting someone where they're at. So if you've got—
Be careful though with this. When somebody's anxious or having a panic attack, you don't want to resonate that. In fact, I feel—
No. That's not what that's about.
Okay, go ahead.
It's not about like always being like, oh, now I'm high here, right? But if somebody comes in sad, if I'm giving too much happy energy, that might be too much for them. So I'm not going to exactly, it's not like on the same level, although sometimes. So I had a 28-year-old with autism who was nonverbal, severe autism. You know, when he would go into his, anxiety rages, he would knock things over and turn off the lights and things like that. And sometimes me coming at him soft was good. Sometimes I needed to guide him to beating a drum or, something like that. And then sometimes auditory stimuli would, make him go off. He was very sensitive to piano. Do not play the piano for him. He would get very angry. Right. So all of these things, it's not about always meeting him exactly where they're at, but sort of trying to guide them towards that more calm state. Yeah. Sometimes you have to start with humming. I had another client, same thing. Especially when he would get self-injurious, then meeting him with just humming and that vibration, right? And if we can eventually get to when we're working with that person, which notes are more frequencies, right? C, D, whatever is more specific for that client. And I think we're going to see these shapes do all kinds of things, because some people, yeah, this downward motion or an upward motion are going to work for them, and some they're just not, right? So
I know for panic attacks, it's really, actually panic attacks, you would just start low and stay low, right? You would not do any activation at all. You want zero activation. Yeah, this would be meeting them where there's at. Yeah, a mountain, very good, very good. There could be different curves, very cool. Okay, so then we got the overall idea of transformation. And this is, focusing on getting them in their body, bringing them into awareness of the emotions. So they're on a path to be aware and accept their own emotions, bring them into expanded state of consciousness. I see that one as really cool, even if you don't, if you can bring people into light, often a whole another world, especially with people that are really sensitive. To see the issue as a doorway, see them as pure spirit. These are pretty rough still. Allowing them to honor as a divine presence, guide them to explore and how and where they feel in their body, no labeling, bring in gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, love, make the sound, balance out the stresses with all the positive things in your life, right? And then find the peace inside, a stable point of awareness, which is the witness, a stable, peaceful soul, if you want to go there, or just love, right? Or just the rest of the body that's not in anxiety, the base of the spine, right? So there's really two ways to go. And this is, I don't think I have time to get into it in a lot of detail, but any ideas as far as the overall guidelines for what we're trying to do, not details like we were just talking about?
Go
ahead.
I just want to say the simplicity of overall is, I've noticed in myself that when you have said, there are just two ways here, there are two ways here. In myself, I feel something. It triggers me. I have body sensory experience.
I didn't say two ways. I said, is there any more? Is what I said.
Oh well, this is what I'm going with. This is where I'm going with this. Is just
no limits. Yes,
exactly. Is the excitement is how amazing it is that we're breaking through more than just two. That it's that we're starting here, but really there's that wake of what's coming. So that's my overall just general.
Okay.
More than.
Okay. Did you have something, Dimitri?
Can I say something just really quickly?
Okay, Amy.
So I just want to put into the space, I so value the group and our vision as pioneers in this field. I also feel like a lot of what's moving forward has to do with our own personal journey inward within ourselves as practitioners, to feel and be sensitive to resonate with our clients. Because from my experience, every single person is different. And I truly, the idea that this does that for everybody every time doesn't resonate for me. I
never put that across. I think you misunderstood, and that's not what's happening here. What we're trying to do in all of these meetings is put out ideas and share, and even add more ideas, and then we'll end up doing research, have people check it out, play with it, say that's cool. We're not saying this is the way to do it. This is the beginning. This is totally the beginning. It's like, how can we make it better is all that counts. There's no attachment. But I mean, I've got some 10 years of working with these and different students and stuff. So there's a little bit behind it. So, I'm attached to some, but goodness gracious, we know nothing here. So yeah, don't have any anxiety about me saying this is the way to do it. I mean, if there's something different, if you're saying, oh, activation, we should get people really activated when they're actually anxious. If you really believe that, tell me, right? Or add to this. Let's not argue. Let's add to it.
So one of the just one of the things I can bring to the conversation is just some pilot studies we've done 10 years ago. Because I've been in this world for about 25 years, just doing pilot studies under the radar, just with my personal experience as a classical musician and a therapeutic musician. And one of the profound pilot studies involved a piece of music I didn't write. There was no intention. The idea of intention for me has always been a little bit of a trigger because I'm a purist.
Let's
And
add to it. Keep going.
And I see that music and sound is a highway that brings that which is within us out into the world. And whatever's moving through that sound is sympathetically resonating within the listener or the client. And so we've done a couple of pilot studies that indicate, yeah, my intention to help my father lowered brainwave frequencies, balance the brain, which relaxed and calmed the brain. That was my intention, moving through the music to help my dad relax after prostate cancer surgery. And then several years later, we did another pilot study with a single piece of music that I didn't write. It was inspired. It moved through me. There was no intention. It was a clear highway. And we had 5 women going through chemotherapy. We did quantitative EEG. They listened to it. They took the CD, or we did measurements. They took the CD home, listened to it once a day for 10 days, came back, and every neurological imbalance tended to normalize. It was like they received individualized musical treatments through one piece of music. Now, how does that happen? And so the conversation is, without my intention moving through the music, it had a different effect on each person, but it was perfect for them.
Yeah, that's cool. There's 13 parameters that I outline in my book in audio recording and producing of music. And intention is only one of those. Music is actually way more powerful unless people are really tuned in to the intention. But let me tell you this, there's 2 things I can say about intention, because I'm not here to argue about whether it works. We're just adding here.
Absolutely.
With intention, one of our students did a research project in our research class where he actually posted sounds of actually chant. And one was recorded with a really powerful intention of healing and light, and I forget exactly, and the second was not included. And they didn't tell anybody which was which, and they asked people to write down their reactions from each one. There was massive physical healing, way more, dramatically more from the one with the intention. Also, if you read the book on Intention Experiment by Lynn McTaggart, she goes through all the research on intention and how it works. But the truth is, if you have a song that sucks, it doesn't matter what the intention is. If the music sucks and people don't like it, it doesn't matter. They're not going to listen to it and they're going to have a bad reaction. So the music is really very critical. So, okay, so I really want to focus on the overall guidelines. So unless somebody has something very specific to this area, let's move on to the treatments, because I think that's where we can really play.
Well, I just want to say, can I say something? The second category, where you're helping to transform the cause of the anxiety, is crucial. Otherwise, you're just going to be like dealing with symptoms, and it's just going to be like an acute thing, and you'll be maybe calming them in the moment. But usually the anxiety would have a deeper source or underlying pattern. And I think it's very important to target that if you're talking about really healing something.
Cool. Yeah, I think it's important as well. The good news is if you get really peaceful, then sometimes things do resolve. You get more insights about your problems. And so peace can lead you to a place of expanded awareness. Weeding and finding the issues. Okay.
The self-discovery and transformation area is what we call transferring to the real world in music therapy.
Say again.
Transferring into the real world, like translation into the real world, right? So all of the treatments that I do are aimed at how can they use this in their daily lives, activities of daily living. Are they having a hard time brushing their teeth or putting on their pants, or is it less severe than that, right? Sometimes it's social emotional. When I'm out and I get panic attacks amongst people, what are the tools I've been given that I can use when I'm not with the music therapist, right?
I realize there's a big difference here between people that have serious disabilities with anxiety versus people that just have anxiety.
Yes.
Because it's really quite different. I realize that's a whole nother category that needs to be added at the top. Because
yeah, and that's what I was trying to say earlier.
You got autism or I mean, dementia. I mean, the approach is going to be quite different because it's going to be there's so many other parameters than somebody that's just a little anxious.
Right, right. The other thing about intention that I wanted to, just an insight that came to me is, well, first of all, clearly all the people that are here are in their heart, right? And I feel like when you are at your core in that place, you're already tapping into source when you're working, which is why that magic happens, why you're seeing this magic happen. And so, but when you were saying about intention, now if I add my awareness, so it's not about the other person's awareness. We're hoping to help guide that person to their awareness. But like you were saying, David, us being really in our awareness helps ground them in that, right? We call it reality orientation with somebody with dementia who literally loses themselves in place and time, right? Mm-hmm. So using things that ground them in the now as much as possible. And if you're most intentionally in that place, then you're just that much stronger of an anchor. Whereas if you're just coming from your heart place and you didn't set that intention and, very intentionally in the beginning with, some sort of protocol for yourself, it's still present and you still see effects, right?
Cool.
But
there's two different types of intention I've learned. One is where you're holding the energy of like love or a consistent energy for just healing the planet through a whole project versus what the intention is for that specific healing of that person, which can change as you find different aspects come up. You can actually change. So there's a higher intention of energy that's quite different than the intention of what you're trying to help with. Because often at what you're trying to help with, people talk about that as the intention. And I'm talking about a much higher intention as well. Okay, so let's look at the safety guidelines. I'm trying to move forward a little here because I really want to get to the actual research, what we might do as far as research. And now we're in the big part here. Safety guidelines, okay. Do not use activating sounds like gongs, Tibetan bowls, rattles, or shakers if someone's really fragile. This is critical. It could kill. Let's see, I need somebody unmuted there. Okay, Stuart and Eleanor, I'm muting you. Okay, so even a crystal bowl can be way too much for somebody having a panic attack or somebody that's had panic attacks in the last month. You have to be really careful with people that are really fragile. Vibroacoustic sound tables, oh my, way too much, right? Do not have them make sound, especially the sound of how they're feeling, right? If they're really fragile. Do not, even making sound is stressful. Don't work with somebody that's really in trouble and not getting counseling. Be aware if you're over your head, right? Really be, you might have to, call a suicide hotline. If there's, really something major physically, call 911, right? Or, so don't be afraid to ask for help. Don't work on emotions, releasing emotions and the core problems. If someone's really fragile, they need to be calmed out first before you can start working with big issues. That's really critical. So this is for the really fragile people. If there's self-harm, get help, or harming others, watch carefully. And this is what somebody said earlier. Watch carefully, like a hawk, at every moment for any negative reaction. A lot of times people do sound and they close their eyes and they go off into bliss, and you open your eyes and actually that person's freaking out, right? When people are really fragile, you really got to watch like a hawk. So if there's anything you're doing that is getting a negative reaction, you have to be really present at every moment in that. Any other safety guidelines here? Michelle?
Just ditto it's so important that unless we're qualified, I'm not qualified, but there are people here who are qualified to work with people with actual, truly, you know, these mental issues, not only mental issues, but the physical ones. We really, calming is really the only thing we're allowed really to do, you know.
Yeah, although there's a fine line. And I'm, you know, if we are informed, I think we can do certain things and take our power back. You do have to be careful when people have really serious situations, but we had this discussion in the class about this too. You know, some people are saying, you shouldn't be doing this. And I'm like, well, you know, this is the way, this is our birthright. We have this power in us to heal ourselves and others, right? So you got to be careful, and that's why these guidelines are here. But and this is a very tricky area. This is why they have psychotherapists, right? But we also, you know, I am not afraid to jump in when I have ideas of what to do and I feel that I'm backed up by spirit.
Yeah, so yes, it's knowing your scope of practice, right? Like, so it's really, this is mostly under that, because I'm qualified to a certain extent to work with someone with psych issues or autism, and I have dealt with, you know, very injurious behaviors, scratching me, biting me, right? So there are people who are going to have different levels of that training, and just knowing our scope of practice is sort of encapsulating that, right? And then if it goes beyond what I'm capable of, I have protocols in place of who to call, you know, when those things happen. So the 911s and all of these things that you have here.
Having a professional that you can call upon if you get in the middle of something, and I've been there. That's why I bring it up, is that sometimes it doesn't seem like it's a really very serious, particularly serious issue. And once you open the box, you go, wow, okay, I didn't realize you were holding on to that. And then it's good to have someone to call. So thank you for going through the guidelines. I won't go on. You get it.
Also, dealing with different cultures is going to be different as well. So, yes, some of these things definitely will apply to certain people, but, you know, again, with the calming thing, yes, ultimately we want everyone to regulate. We call it dysregulating, when someone's dysregulating versus regulating. So we're getting them to regulate, get into this calm space, whatever. But also different cultures have different ways of dealing with things too. So I think we need to be aware of that cultural aspect that could be a factor as well.
Okay, let's look at the go ahead.
David, I have a question. David, what about using tuning forks? What about using?
We're getting the treatments next. We just did general guidelines and safety. Now we've got tuning forks coming up.
Just want to say that in envisioning how to go about this forward, you know, as biological beings, and all of us are human, for everyone to have a basic understanding of the polyvagal theory and down-regulating, up-regulating the nervous system, knowing the basic parts of our nervous system, it's going to really empower our practitioners to have that basic understanding of what's happening in the moment physiologically, nervous system-wise, and then how upregulate, you know, how regulation actually works. You know, how does regulation work? So the polyvagal theory, and of course then regulation practices that are pretty universal, just breath and our voice, right? So like the simplicity of having that knowledge for our practitioners as almost a, what is that? What's that called? One of the, not a guideline, but yeah, some protocol, yeah, something like that. I think would really deepen how to then say, oh, well, of course that sound would, or this sound would, especially for people who might not be as aware of those things intuitively.
I know a lot about polyvagal and the vagus nerve and how it works, but most people don't. I've seen very little information about exactly how different frequencies and timbres and intervals and music actually affect that. Although there's probably some out there, it'd be really cool. But,
sure, well, not in the treatment, but in the actual beginning stages of connecting with someone and how to then, you know, like, anyway, because of course the vagus nerve is one thing, and anyway, we can go into that later. I just think it's important.
Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's look at the treatment. So here's some general guidelines: listen and be present. Don't entrain into their energy. You know, you can. With anxiety, to meet them where they're at is not really the best way. You might not go to mellow sounds immediately, but of course, I mean, if I'm like working with somebody with depression, I'm going to really meet them where they're at and take them from there. But with anxiety, to resonate that at all, you got to be really careful.
And that, David, real quick, that's a perfect example of what I'm talking about, is that actually in the law of resonance, we do know that by meeting a frequency is the fastest way to be able to alter it and change it. And so what these kind of what I would say is trauma-informed care practices through that guideline of the vagal theory allows us to immediately go into the breath, right? Somebody is in a panic state. We know first, what do we see? Their breath, their facial patterns, right?
Yeah. Let's go through all these treatments and then talk about it.
Okay.
And then add to it. Okay, so we got acceptance of it's okay to be that way. It's okay to feel what you're feeling. Big problem that people think there's something wrong with them, right? And say, no, this is just fine to be where you're at. Any sounds or exercises that create empowerment, that could be overall guidelines. Even bringing up and expressing anger could be helpful. If they start crying, don't touch them. Tell them something like, it's okay, let it out. Some people think crying is a problem. I see crying as excellent, a great release, right? Okay, so then we get into the practice centering. You can do your own centering, whatever you do to get centered beforehand, and 3 ohms or 3 breaths, if they're open to it, you could do, and even before you do the intake questions. And then there's different areas here. I've got doing sound with them, for them, having them make sounds, doing sound on them, on the physical body, and then music playback and sound and movement. Chakra treatment's my favorite. And sound, an example of a sound treatment, and then treatments other than sound. Okay. So here's what we have here. We got doing sound for them. The obvious thing is crystal bowls, alchemy bowls, Tibetan bowls, didgeridoo, tuning forks, flutes, whatever you have, whether it's consistent tone or consistent rhythm, right? That's the main thing. That's the basis of how it all works. So the actual consistency is where the piece is. Sweet melodies, right, on the melodic instruments. In crystal bowls, you can use the gem infused. So now you're actually working with the actual crystals within them, and they're getting that energy. Breathing with the sound, getting them to breathe. I believe that the best is to have them breathe at a rate that feels right for them deeply, right? Because everybody's rate is a bit different. Although you could do, very specific timing, breathe in, breathe out, but often playing the music to the breath. Take a deep breath, hold it at crescendo, then a gong release. Alternate from one ear to the other with affirmations, you are loved, right? While doing sound. Guided meditations can be really cool. See them healing and transforming as you do the sound. Okay? These are doing the sound. Then we got having them make sounds. Again, if they're fragile, you don't have them make sound. Help someone find their voice to sound their thoughts, feelings, and emotion as a space to let them leave the body and the mind with the sound. Right? It's really a lot about getting them to free up their voice so they can express their emotions when the problems happen. Right? So practice using the voice to release the stress emotionally and physically in the body. Have them practice, make the sound of how you feel. Make the sound of your day. Make the sound of an ideal day. Have them send the sound of love to their own heart. That one's really good, really effective, right? They got to be open to making sound. Any more breath work. Do the sound on the out breath only. It's less stressful. Make the sound out of the, imagine that anxiety is gone forever. How would that feel to make the sound of that, to get it in your body? Do a very powerful no, right? To empower if they're not too fragile. Make the sound of gratitude, compassion, forgiveness, love. Find the sound of anxiousness and then replace it with peaceful sounds. You can do it slowly. Make it calm sound. Scan through where there's an issue in the body. Make a sound and slowly transform it to love and light or harmony. Have higher beings make sound. Have source make sound. Don't tell anybody. Send a sound of love to your anxiety. Compare the sound of stressors to the sound of gratitude and compassion. Make that sound. Send a sound of love to your stressors. Right? And then doing sound on them. Crystal bowls on the body, Tibetan bowls, physically on the body, if they're not too fragile. Frame drum, really close to the body. Sound table. So now you're getting that chaotic vibration out of their body. Tuning forks on the body, just on the spine, the vertebrae, on the bottom of the feet, really cool. Schumann forks, but you can have them choose the forks themselves to find which ones feel the most calming for them. Give them, let them play with it. Play a tuning fork on a crystal or a gemstone on the body. That's really cool. Some more forks here. Weighted forks on the bones. These are different acupuncture points. It's like you can do the whole tuning forks on acupuncture points. You don't have to use just the acutonics fork, but these are some of the acupuncture points that you would use for anxiety to put forks on. So those can be really cool. Then there's music playback. Play the Schumann resonance CD, not forks.
David, one thing, this is Pat Smith. I was at a workshop on tuning forks, and the woman made sure that anyone that was going to have the tuning fork placed on them did not have any like bone fusion screws, rods, and that sort of thing, because those frequencies could loosen those implants in the body.
What type of implants?
It was like my back is fused.
Okay.
And so she would not use a tuning fork on me, or if I had knee replacements, any artificial implant like that, she said that you should not have anything that vibrates put on the body because it could loosen it.
Okay, cool.
I think that part of this is, I was bringing in other populations. I think it depends on what population we're talking about. And this, for me, seems like neurotypical, maybe, kids to adults who have the ability to choose to have those things on them and be able to tell you, right, I've had a surgery, maybe I shouldn't have that on me. So I think that, I don't know, it seems to me that that's what we're mostly talking about.
Yeah, because if we're going to talk about any other issues, we should really be talking about those issues, because that's a whole ball of wax, right? It's a whole different treatment plan. So let's just focus on anxiety, general anxiety for
neurotypical,
for normal. What do you call it?
Neurotypical.
That's a word for normal.
Yeah. So basically, people who haven't had a stroke or aren't dealing with severe ailments of that sort, right?
Yeah. Good.
Because,
good.
Awesome.
That's good. That's really important that we point that out again.
I think it'll help us narrow our focus to sometimes.
Yeah. Okay. So those are kind of what we've come up with so far. I would love to hear anything that you guys do that's been successful, really helpful, that we could add to this. Because I know there's a lot of experience and practice here.
Did you have toning on there?
Yeah. Having them make sound is Let's see, making sound.
Not having them make sound. I'm talking about,
Oh,
okay.
just toning on them.
Yeah, I did that the other day and I found
You
another.
know, I don't think I actually put that in there. I mean, you could do toning, chant, mantra for that matter, but especially toning, or just voice work.
And also on them, not just for them.
Yeah. Good. Good. Oh. Okay. What? Somebody tell me of what you have done that's like really been effective.
I did.
Somebody else.
Oh, I believe that tapping is a really beautiful way also to. Can you hear me?
Yes, say again. What did you say?
I believe that you can use tapping in every situation of anxiety.
Yeah.
Also because it does something with the brain. It synchronizes both parts.
Yeah, we actually have that in here. It's actually a sound because it's a rhythm. Also, I found that if you tap and find a rhythm of tapping that works for them, because if you can match their brainwave rate, rhythm, and heart rate when they're at rest while tapping, that's really cool. Yeah.
Yeah. And the mantra after that.
Yeah.
It's really cool too. Yeah.
Yeah, just with that. Yeah. And we'll match the craniosacral rhythm. I mean, the thing what you guys all do, right, or a lot of you do, is play crystal bowls, play any consistent instrument, do a consistent rhythm, and get mellower and mellower. I mean, that's like, there's nothing, I mean, that's the most basic, right? One thing that I've found that is really effective, I learned how to get rid of panic attacks. This is, I don't know, you know, of course, this won't maybe fly in hospitals with doctors, but it's so effective. There might be a way that we can do it in a more mainstream way. If you simply find the frequency of each chakra intuitively and imagine a consistent vibration at each chakra, I found that when I did this, that not only would the panic attack go away, I would be in bliss. And I've taught it to other people, and it's worked dramatically for other people, right? So that's really effective. And I think part of that has to do with tuning in to the whole body, to all the different parts of the body, where you're not just tuning into one thing, you're going into multi-track mind, where you're tuning into multiple things at once, which brings you into theta, which is a peaceful state. It's like looking at sparkles on the water, right? Tuning into 7 chakras simultaneously at the end is really, that can be really effective. The chakra guided meditation CD I have is like unbelievably effective as well. It's really used to help me, and it helps a lot of people.
I've done something similar, and also while tapping as well. And I actually created a whole sheet with every day of the week choosing a note, so C, D, E, F, G, whichever, and then doing a mantra on that every day of the week. And it was interesting actually, because it did this between Monday and Tuesday wasn't like the very next chakra. It would be like the 3rd to the 5th, and then the 5th to the 7th. And it was doing this sort of like the overtone series. And while tapping, I can share that with you as well. I feel like it's something that I think we could continue to work on. But you could also have that happen in a single session, right? So each day you're doing that. And then maybe Sunday or something, you do them all in one session.
Very cool. Very cool. The other one besides that is really profoundly effective is to find their natural rhythm of their brain waves and give them a CD tuned to the key of their own brain waves, which means you just octavize up that rhythm until you get a note. And then also play binaural beats tuned to that rhythm. That's with Jeffrey Thompson's work, that's been shown to be really effective. And we do it as well. And it's just, I had a guy that had major anxiety after a brain injury. And he was able to get off his Adderall and completely get back to normal just by having the binaural beats tuned to them. So that's really effective. And I think that's where we're headed in a lot of the research, is to actually find the way I do it is I'll play each of the 12 notes and see which one makes the person most peaceful. The way Jeffrey Thompson does it is he hooks up a heart monitor, EEG, all types of devices, and has different rhythms flashing in the eyes, different binaural beats going off in the ears, the sound table vibrating to the same note, and they go through all frequencies, watching for when the devices actually show a balance of sympathetic and parasympathetic. And that's really cool, because now you're getting the person back to their natural rhythm and natural key of when they're in homeostasis with zero anxiety.
So then you could create that meditation specifically for them, right? Based on what you're finding. I don't know, can I share something with you guys?
Yes, please.
Visually, if that's not welcome at this time, that's totally fine. I just wanted to, I got a little excited when we're talking about frequency and body systems and tapping.
There's beta frequencies that are before anxiety. I noticed Carolyn was putting something in there. So, and when they're tuned to you, it's much better, but it's not really clear precisely what beta frequencies. They say 16 to 20 is anxiety, but I don't think that's completely true. It varies. So it's really about stable, consistent vibrations tuned to you that create peace. And so even in beta, it can be really good for ADD, which can cause anxiety.
David, after you're finding their note that makes them the most peaceful, how do you use that note?
Well, you play a song, you can play a song tuned to that, or a song with that tempo in it as well, and binaural beats embedded that are doing that tempo, right? And that's what I've got with my songs, that's what we offer. And it's, I think it's really, I mean, there's nothing better than getting people back to their own natural rhythm. And that's just the beginning. I mean, we can go to a whole nother level from there. Yeah, I don't think even Alexander actually tunes the binaural beats to the person. Yeah, there's only a few people like Jeffrey Thompson and myself that are doing that. Okay.
I'm Deborah Sheshe. Can you hear me?
Yes.
I have an elderly lady that I do sound healing for, and she routinely has anxiety, panic attacks. And when I start with her, I always have her put her hand over her heart and have her breathe into her heart and to connect with her heart and send love to her heart. And then I start playing my crystal harp, and it really, really calms her. She has problems with the chest pains, and her arms are tingling, and she can't walk. And after the session's over, she's completely normal. She doesn't have the pain anymore, and she's totally relaxed. So it's very effective.
Cool. Yeah, I think different people are going to respond. I mean, I have a lot of people. We sell crystal harps. It's incredible. I think that different people are going to respond to different instruments, and it's just a matter of, watching until you find it, right? Somebody else?
Oh, one of the regulating tools, for instance, in some sensory experiencing therapies would be that hand over heart and hand at belly. Both those two together, creating the immediate experience of embrace and self-regulation.
Yeah.
So just part of
How
that.
could you add sound. It was cool when she said, put the hand on the heart and send sound of love to your heart. That's cool. You could do also, you could actually do, just put your hand on your belly and do a sound and say, okay, feel that sound in your belly where your hand is, right? That could be really cool. So there's a lot of things we can do with, I mean, of course, the big thing is music. I mean, you can just have them, you could help put together a playlist of songs that are peaceful for them and make suggestions, you know, or say, hey, go on YouTube and just play until you find your favorite. And we're going to create like a whole playlist for you in either iTunes, or we could do it in Spotify. And so that you've got your own little, you know, anxiety treatment section, right? That can be really cool as well. Of course, here, movement is really important if they're not too fragile. Anything you can do as far as getting to move. I know with panic attacks, I found that exercise outside of the treatment was really important to get my body back in shape. So it was able to handle things.
Yeah, Carolyn had a couple of suggestions. One was humming, and then she's saying 3,5 hertz helps with anxiety with 2 tuning forks, for example. I'm not sure if that's 3.5 hertz or 3 and 5 hertz.
3 to 5, maybe between 3 and 5. Yeah. Yeah, that's a delta frequency. Delta is really good, especially when it's tuned to you. It's even more effective. But yeah, that's nice to get like any binaural beat. It's down that low. Very good. Very good. Okay, now there's treatments other than sound that people have come up with. Be the observer, just witness it. That's really helped me dramatically, where I'm like, okay, little anxiety going on here. The observer is perfectly still, the witness, right? There's a book on anxiety that I have. Tap on the soft part of the cheeks, like right here. It's really quite amazing. Or open the, let your hands stand up and have your hands by the side and just do this. It's really effective. That was in the book. Vitamin C. Don't want to use emergency because sugar can trigger panic attacks or anxiety. Vitamin C is supposed to be good. Acupuncture, acupressure points. There's essential oils, salt water, you know, bath, posture, breathing, walking, presence, crystals. I mean, crystals can help. Laughter, conscious language. Stop it. Stop. Set an intention for you. Remember the first time you were anxious and set acceptance right to that. That's interesting. St. John's Wort. Okay. And then the homework. The homework is get them to figure out what they want to do of the things you do that, you know, maybe they want to buy an instrument or just do toning, but get them to choose things that will get them to a place of peace at least 3 times a day. 40 would be the best, right? I mean, to really, you know, wherever they can do, because the more they can go to a place of peace, the more the body starts regulating on its own. And use the voice to release from anything, you know, as we did as babies. Ah! Oh, God, ah! Right? Let it out. Anytime there's a stressful situation, let it out, right? With the sound. So that's why it's important to have them practice making sound with the voice so they get comfortable enough to do that. Tone, chant.
David, can I add something real quick?
Yes, please.
Since I lit up, so I was like, maybe I should jump in real quick. So in Ayurveda, anxiety is usually caused by excess vata energy, and you can look that up. But vata can be pacified through routine. So the more routine that you have in your life, the better. And also eating a vata pacifying diet. And then just in general, from a more Western perspective, if we have a better diet and our gut microbiome is more balanced, we're less likely to have anxiety as well. So even just probiotics might help. Those people might be referred to someone who does Ayurveda or holistic nutrition in order to help with their diet, because a lot of our Western diet is very anxiety producing. All of the chips and stuff, those things are very aggravating.
Okay. So tone, chant, or mantra 8 minutes 3 times a day. Find an instrument that calms you, play it daily, create a calm music playlist, do ceremony, a ritual, and to release stresses. And send love to your heart with sound. And find a sacred object and do it with sound. Get on the sound table. That's what I do. And it's amazing. If I got any anxiety, I get on the sound table, 10 minutes, it's completely gone. Not only gone mentally, emotionally, but physically out of the body. Listen to music tuned to you, do a meditation with sound to get in a place of peace and power. Okay. Listen to brainwave CDs, walk in nature. It's a big one. Listen to nature sounds. Nature sounds are incredibly effective. And then my CDs, Unconditional Love. I have my friend I had last year, she got too much THC in her CBDs. And she was in the hospital for almost a month with a panic attack. And she said that the Calm Sleep CD saved her life. Unconditional Love CD, that was created from anxiety. I used to have panic attacks and I would play that song on guitar, start crying, and it would completely go away. It's like also, I had a woman come in who had Parkinson's, and she said, Parkinson's is like having panic attacks all the time. And she was had too much tremors to get on the sound table. So I played Unconditional Love for her. Within 5 minutes, she was completely, all of her tremors were completely gone. She also said the one reason was because not only the love, but also the rhythm of the song matched her own rhythm, and that allowed her to calm down.
Music actually increases dopamine, and Parkinson's is a dopamine deficient disease. It's in the basal ganglia. And so that's part of why that happened, because her dopamine actually increased, which is also bringing in motor cortices, right, as well. That's why the tremors, it actually affects our cerebellum and into our spinal cord. So that's partly why that helps.
Grounding, you mentioned the earth, or go out in nature. We haven't really talked about grounding and how important that is. Literally touching the earth and allowing all of the negative ions to.
Yeah, got that in this section here. We were just doing the sound section. Yeah, good. Yeah, that's really important. It's also getting grounding mats, not only for your computer, but even to sleep on can be dramatically effective. There's stretching. Okay, satsang is good. Okay, and then these are the other things. I found that if it used to be when I had panic attacks, if I am really doing extended mental focus, it could totally cause an attack. Okay, affirmations, meditation, more water, exercise, meditation retreat, spend more time with animals, walnuts, oatmeal, lentils, omega-3s, arsenicum album, homeopathic remedy. I was up and with a panic attack for 3 days, and my homeopath said, take that. And within 30 seconds, after 3 days, the panic attack was gone. Right. That's very cool to know about. Of course, massage, grounding, barefoot walking, right? Really important. Also, if you're around the ocean, walking in the ocean in the salt water is incredible. Reduce all this noise around you, right? Sensory deprivation take, creative project, journaling, self-care list, be creative, watch a movie you love. And then check in with them to see how they're doing. Just someone caring can really help. Look for support groups.
I would also like to teach them that they can walk between two thoughts. So if they are in an anxiety, an anxiety is something that happens after a thought. So if they could describe the thought, and after they have described the thought, they go to another thought that's positive, grounding, and move between both of those thoughts. That could help too.
Okay, so being able to focus your thoughts on between two thoughts. Here's another one that I found really really powerful for any stress, is if you've got any stressors, to actually tune into all your stresses. If you're focused on one thing and you're going, oh God, I can't believe this, can't believe this, right? Actually tune into all your stresses at once. But at the same time, simultaneously, tune in to everything you can be grateful for. If you haven't done a gratitude list, you gotta create it. I've got a YouTube video that goes through just about everything you'd be grateful for. It's called Sound of Gratitude. So you're looking at all your problems and all your gratitude at the same time, right? And that takes you into theta because you're tuning into multiple things at once, and it really grounds you out or makes you peaceful. And I like to take that to the extreme, where you go, okay, what are all the problems on the planet? You know, racial inequity, COVID, politics. Okay, there's a lot of weird stuff going on. But what about all the incredible beauty and bliss and love that people are sharing? Look at it all at once and just see the whole at once instead of focusing on one positive or one negative. Just look at the whole thing, and that takes you into theta, which is a very peaceful state, and your whole brain lights up, where you have more capacity to work on things. Amy's action, what this list is for? Okay, we've gone over it a few times. It's the list is for ultimately to be refined to take to all the different. Maybe I misunderstand. Maybe this question is different than what I'm explaining.
So yeah, I was just for clarification, all of these other wonderful ways to help reduce anxiety. I'm just wanting to be clear that these are ideas to be shared with practitioners to use with their clients, perhaps in addition to sound music or instead of sound music. So it's just this other category of exploration.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
All of which can help inform us as well.
David, I thought we could add heart coherence practices under
those are like guided meditations, right?
Well, specifically heart coherence.
Well, the ones I've seen for heart coherence that come with it, there's all these different guided meditations or different meditations that bring you into heart coherence. Is that what you're talking about?
Well, I'm talking about like the heart math system of techniques.
Yeah, and specific. What is it?
I would put it under the other therapies, like the previous.
No, what is it though? Tell me what it is, because when you say that, I think of all the guided meditations and all the different meditations they've come up with to get you into. And I've gone through them and played with a lot of them. Is that what you're talking about? All the meditations?
Not specifically. I was just talking about techniques that people learn to apply in their own lives.
What are the techniques? Give me some example of the techniques.
One of them is quick coherence. That's when you shift whatever stress or unpleasant emotion you're experiencing in the moment by a simple practice. Heart focus, heart breathing, heart feeling.
Okay, those are meditations. Yeah, exactly.
Well, that's like a technique to use in the moment. Then there's like the heart lock-in technique. It's not so much a guided meditation. It's more like a technique somebody learns to do themselves. And it's about getting into that state of coherence through positive emotions and heart-focused breathing. So,
cool. Cool.
And then you can use the technology, if you wish, the heart rhythm biofeedback technology, to actually train yourself to be in that state and maintain that state.
You can also play with different sounds using those feedback devices, and that's very cool. I mean, there's, besides HeartMath unit, there's also the, there's tons of units. I mean, someone, let's see, Kat was talking about a unit that you can get for like $200. Was it iCare? Is that it, Kat? Oh, are you there, Kat?
I'm here, but I don't recall the device. Sorry.
Yeah, there's like a device you can get on your phone that you hook up, and it measures
Oh,
like
yeah. Let me look
10
at
different
it.
10 different parameters. I think it's called iCare. And so you can get these devices that show you, you know, heart rate variability, all different types of things, and then go play different instruments and see what works the best for you, right?
Yeah, it is iCare Health Monitor. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
It's an Android
There's
app.
also,
Yeah.
there's, if you get the game Wild Divine, they actually will give you a monitor that shows you heart rate variability and also galvanic skin response. And that's like, and then you get the game as well. It's kind of fun. I've used that game.
David, while you're up there, I'm sorry, you scrolled back, but
sorry.
the addition to that, because it has to do with that coherence and that, and you know, theta aspects. The practice of yoga nidra, of course, is a guided meditation aspect, but want to bring forth yoga.
I had to stop cooking them, so.
Are they mashed?
No,
Let me mute them.
I'll just leave them.
Yeah.
Are they real?
If they're gonna have.
I'm sorry. I'm sure who's talking. Who was talking?
I don't know what just happened.
Okay, yeah, I've muted them. Go ahead. So tell me more about Yoga Nidra, or tell everybody more about Yoga Nidra.
Okay, so
just briefly.
In Yoga Nidra, can you hear me?
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Yoga Nidra would be one of those aspects of guided meditation where we're bringing the body or mind and body into centralized focus, where first we go through different parts of the body, different sensations of the body, and there are a couple different sections that are to be included, but in general, you would have coming to absolutes, and then also contrast. So you're building resiliency actually in the neural pathways through this recollection in the moment. And you can do it through sound, you can do it through words. Example of that, like Evelyn was saying, that bringing from one thought form to another thought form, we're doing that with like sensation or object, or anyway.
Cool.
Very
cool.
much in.
I mean, you know, I mean, there's like a whole area that's like major that we haven't really, it was only briefly mentioned, and that's chant and mantra, because there's, I mean, they have a whole nother level of energy going on when you really get into them. So that's a huge area if your client is open to it, right? You mentioned it briefly, but it's just way bigger. It's just so huge.
Did you put the grounding on the general area?
Yeah, it's, well, I have it under barefoot walking.
I think it was up there. I thought I saw.
Well, there was natural, but the grounding is different even than barefoot, but okay, that's good. That's great.
Okay, now let's
add something.
Okay.
Okay. My name's Chelsea. I just, let's see. So I guess speaking to anxiety, and maybe just under the umbrella of dealing with people who have anxiety, who maybe they don't even know what a chakra is. You know, maybe they have, their anxiety is so bad that it's affecting their voice. And, you know, like you're saying, you want ideally for them to be able to breathe and with you and to experience that part of the treatment, and you want to be able to have them release their stress and free their voice and utilize their voice and encourage them to make sounds. But a lot of people at first won't be comfortable with any of that. And I just kind of want to speak to that, that population. which will be a lot of people, because in experiencing anxiety myself, I know, and my daughter has severe anxiety to the point where it was really affecting her voice, and just not even feeling like you can express yourself in any of those ways. I want to speak to the breathing, and encouraging people to, or just kind of, I know a couple of people mentioned, you know, you want to like maybe even before the questionnaire, like have them breathe with you. And what I found in my own experience with anxiety and going to some Buddhist temples and some meditations and different things that I was trying out, was immediately they were saying, okay, now focus on your breath. And then as soon as I would focus on my breath, I could immediately not breathe, because that was the problem. I was having so much anxiety that I couldn't breathe. So focusing on my breath was like the most irritating thing for me to hear a practitioner say, like, okay, now we're going to focus on your breath. And in my experience, I'm a musician, I'm a songwriter, I'm a producer as well. I'm just constantly in my own time researching and studying and developing ways to help people with anxiety. And I've found that with this population, with the people who are experiencing anxiety, a lot of times it's the best approaches are ones that are sort of like secret or a little bit hidden, to kind of help just get that in there as far as music goes, and utilizing other art forms that help them to get it out, to get something out. One would be drawing, whatever they're comfortable with. I found that utilizing a blank canvas is something that's really helpful, because it kind of gives this, it's just like a good tool. It's terrifying. People are terrified, I've found, of placing some paint on a blank canvas. And so it really speaks to that anxiety, and to get them to sort of have the music playing in the background, music with no words, and music with a different language that they're not used to that they don't speak. And the idea is with anxiety to get out of your mind. Well, in some things, like some people were saying about, you know, really connecting the mind and the body, and that's important. But at first, to get out of your mind, to get out of your thinking, to get unstuck from that and into body and into flow and into like some sort of cathartic release, I found that showing them that blank canvas and giving them like a piece of, you know, a paintbrush or a pencil or something, and just listening to that music and getting them to move. And not only does that give them something that they can easily do at home and practice at home, but it also then gives them something where they can see their sound, they can see their release, and they can leave with that piece of paper. And you know, you can kind of, as a practitioner, tell them like, here, you got this out today, and you can see it, and here it is, and you can do this at home at any time. So that's one thing that can be really helpful. And as well, so many people that I've met in being an artist, a performer, are always coming up to me afterwards and saying, oh, I wish I could do what you do, you know. And I'm always telling them, you can, you know, music is not unattainable to you, it's in you, it is you. And so to like have somebody be coming and being a part of, you know, to have them be brave enough to come and say, yeah, I want to like do this thing that I don't even understand, the sound therapy, what is this? And to not only be coming to that, but somebody with anxiety coming to that. I think that it's really important to maybe start sometimes by a lot like hand percussion, just a lot of, hey, this is all you need to do. The music is, you know, it's just hit it, you know, and to utilize that a lot, to get that cathartic release out in order to even get to these other things that, you know, everybody's talking about, where, you know, you're utilizing the meditations and the breathing and the, the tuning forks and all of these different things. And then, you know, maybe incorporating more of what people can do themselves, so they're not leaving just feeling like they got a treatment, but they're leaving knowing that like they are this, they can do this. And then maybe that like painting or drawing type of thing, just it really is a powerful tool for them to have this thing that they leave with, that they can see their sound.
Right.
Can see
Thank
their
you.
Yeah.
Excellent, excellent. You know, the things I've found that are really helpful for people that can't do sound. I mean, at the Institute, when people come for open houses, I have them do gibberish. But when I went to the Montessori schools and asked the kids to do that, they weren't going to do it. And the thing that really worked was call and response. You know, okay, you know, I'm going to do this sound, you make it back. Ooh, and they go, ooh, and that's much less, and it's easier for them to do. So I found that can be really cool, especially in groups, but even singly. Right? But gibberish can be fun because you go, I'm gonna do something really serious here, blah, 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 and have them do it, and often they'll do it, right? Especially if there's not like a whole room full of people, and that can be really a good beginning to open up their voice as well. Okay, well,
just real quick. On the breath issue with people with anxiety, a really good breath to try is called stair-step breath. It's where you inhale, because the diaphragm gets kind of locked up and people can't breathe in deeply when they have anxiety. So you have them breathe in short sips, sip, 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 and then a long exhale. So that can often help relax the diaphragm and get them into a better state. So it's kind of like, so that might be something to try too, because yeah, I put a link in the chat.
What I would do is also anything like that, actually do a sound while they're doing it. If they're going sip, sip, you go, and then when they let it out, go, ah. So even if they don't do it, you're doing it. And so they start to associate it with the sound and ultimately can do sound with it too.
Yeah.
That's awesome. I love that modification. I'm totally going to try that. Thank you.
They would entrain to that, right? Another thing, I loved what you were saying, Chelsea, about, you know, someone who's, and those actually kind of work together, right? Like if somebody's in a panic attack and they've got that shallow breath, you know, maybe we move them into that breath by completely taking them out of themselves in the moment and asking them to observe the room and what are you noticing in the room? So starting with something like, you know, what do you notice? And we could even, you know, ultimately guide them towards whatever tool they want to make this beautiful piece of, you know, art that they're going to take with them. So you start with that, you move into the breathing. When they, oh, I noticed that there's a piano there. I noticed that there's a crystal bowl over there, right? Because then they're also having autonomy by what they choose. Maybe they want drum, maybe they want to hear the bowl, maybe they want to hear this other thing. And so if you are asking them to bring their awareness into the room, you can sort of focus them into that and hopefully come into it.
You can also, we've done it for the kids. We have exercises for the Montessori kids. You can actually, after doing a drawing, you can actually, once they get comfortable with sound, they can actually make the sound of that drawing, right? So, and you know, you can do it for them at first, and then it might take a while, but you know, that's very cool. Okay, so I want to get into the research possibility because this is the most important part. Okay, so what could we do to move the, to help the most people, right? What could we prove? What could we research that would help the most people? And here are some ideas. First of all, what sounds are the best for getting rid of the anxiety? Is it, you know, drones, melodies, rhythm? It's going to be different for different people, so it's a little tricky, right? So we can play crystal bowls, Tibetan bowls, harp, just have individual instruments and play all of them and engage with all the different feedback parameters. Which one works for the most people? If we do enough people, then we can say, okay, well, goodness gracious, the tuning forks are actually working, you know, 80% of the time, whereas the sound table works 90% of the time, whereas the flute actually used 100% of the time, right? The harp was, so we get this really good overview as to what works, and then we can try and modify it for why it's better for certain people and how we can figure out what's best for them. So that's
David,
one.
Can you add voice on there? Because I think that in context of how we can actually, you know, what works for most all people, we have to start with what everyone has. We have breath, right? So even if it's not a vocalized something, its voice is like the most tangible for every single person that's both giving and receiving. So
yeah. And tuning forks too on that, I think.
There's tons of things.
Except that not everybody has tuning forks. I don't have tuning forks. So
it
if I
doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Know.
This is research now. We're doing this in research. We will have tuning forks in research.
Well, of course. I'm just saying.
Yeah. But I mean, if tuning forks are the number one thing that gets rid of anxiety, that's good to know, so people can start getting them and using them. You know, if that's the deal. I mean, the whole point is, what does it? We need to know. Okay, then what music is the best? Oh my God, this is a big can of worms, because so many people actually have tried different music and they say, oh, I use this music in clinical research and it got like this great results and all these people are transformed, right? And it's like really high percentage. Well, cool, but what about, I mean, let's figure out what music and what in music is doing it. And, you know, with my books, I've gotten some pretty detailed ideas. I mean, obviously, a slow rhythm is obviously really good for relaxation versus fast rhythm. And then to actually do it to a breath, certain musical intervals, and then the smooth flow where you transition to more and more mellow over time smoothly. I found that to be one of the most important things, because now you're actually tapping into the biosystem in a really deep way, which I feel actually goes over 8 minutes up and down. So there's different aspects that could be researched to really, so instead of just saying, oh, is this song, is Stephen Halpern's music really effective, or my music really effective? Let's try different music with different little differences. And it's a tricky thing to figure out, but I think that I would like to figure out what is it that's really doing it, right, in music. I mean, is it a combination of all the parameters and the relationship of all of them, or is it one set of parameters or multiple sets? What are the main things that are actually doing? I'm sure there's some research out there, but I don't think they've actually thought about a lot of the components that I've been thinking about. Any thoughts on that? I'm most excited about this one.
I think oh yeah, you go, Michelle.
Well, I'm just thinking the time signature is kind of, you know, if you have some one of those odd ones, like it goes 9/8 and then 8/8, or
I like
if times
3/4. 3/4.
Yeah.
There's something about 3/4 that does it for me.
And how about the ones that the timing is not according to your heart? It's like a little faster than your heart rate. That's really awful. I don't know how you'd say that, but I think sometimes
well, the number one thing is ultimately, I think of all of this, tuning. Well, it's not the only thing at all, though. Tuning it to the key and rhythm of the person, like we were talking about before. I mean, I have a feeling, you know, that's huge. Although I still believe it's something about the music, which can be the emotional component, it's basically a combination of chord progressions, the melody, the actual intervals that are being used. It's all of it together to create this energy. But what music does it for the most people? I think I haven't quite figured it out. Go ahead.
That's why earlier I was, when I was talking about populations, I feel like right now we're being very specific with a very specific population. And if we're trying to reach as many people as possible, right? So I'm of course, I love tuning forks. I want them to be used as much as possible, but I know for sure that some of the populations I work with won't be able to take them on right away. or
I
whatever.
don't
And
think they're
we're
going to
doing
be. I bet
research.
you they're the lower on the totem pole myself. Well, I shouldn't say that. If you do acupuncture, it can be cool. Go ahead.
Right,
I
but
see what you're
what
saying.
I'm saying is when it comes to the research, then if we're not including,
Mm-hmm.
I just feel like, you know, when I was saying earlier that I don't have tuning forks, I don't use tuning forks right now with my specific populations because that's not appropriate right now for where they're
Voice
at.
might be the
or with
number
them.
one.
It is definitely a number one.
Yeah, that's cool. That would help.
And drumming, I
because they
think,
don't
is
have to buy
definitely
it.
number two.
Yeah,
sorry?
then rhythm, drums, rhythm.
Yeah.
Specific.
The drums are easy because I just did a treatment with a woman who had Alzheimer's, and you know, I mean, besides we found her note and gave her binaural beats, but then I said, just tap your one leg and then the other like this. And she starts doing it, right? And any music you listen to, just do that. Left and right, get the left and right. And she was like, okay.
Well, it ties into movement as well. One of my clients has profound dementia, does not speak at all, but will move their legs, right? And I can even direct them. They can receive that from me. So their aphasia is mostly receptive and expressive, but they still can understand certain things like moving their feet. That's typically what they do the most with me is move, and that's how I communicate with her is through her feet, right? And that's tying that movement back in too. And you know, she won't even necessarily drum with her hands, but she would with her feet, which is interesting, right?
Cool.
Yeah.
Yeah, so music would be good too, because that's something that people could access easily as well if we got it figured out.
So just really quickly, I just put a link in the chat. So there are design checklists that are really important. And a lot of the music-based intervention research that's already been done really doesn't address a lot of these variables that we all know about that change the different potential outcomes. So we may want to just look at that. We just designed a clinical trial and we used this checklist, which helps it become duplicatable as well.
Cool.
So we may even want to think about, depending how basic you want to start, if you want it to be duplicatable, you know, pre-recorded music is duplicatable, or having individual musicians play the same music, which would be an interesting study, play the same piece of music, because that personal expression is a variable when we think about music interventions, and the degree of proficiency, the personality, the consciousness moving through it, all of those aspects move through the music. So perhaps designing something with one piece of music performed by two different people, record it, see what the results are. That might be a design that could be duplicated. Just an idea.
Really, I think the main way is to really design this so that so we have intuition as to why it's working. And then we compare music that changes one or two parameters and see if that component is why it's working. Okay, and then we do it for another component of the music. And then after we do multiple components, comparing it to other without those components as much, and we may have to do it based on, you know, just our judgment as to what the quality of that component. Then we say, okay, we've now got these 5 components that we believe are really critical. Let's actually put them together and see, you know, let's see if them together is good. But, you know, let's test. Yeah, there's a lot of detail here. I'm really excited about, because what I'm excited about is ultimately after we find this, what really works, because I don't think the people that are studying the way music works have as wide a perspective as some of the people out there these days, especially what I've been, you know, since I've written the main books in the field in audio recording and in producing and in sound healing, and had like so many students over the years in the recording classes come up with really cool, trippy stuff that are really effective. I've got a really interesting perspective. And so I think we could pin it down more.
Well, a way to do that would be to, when the very beginning of the research would be to find their preferred music. So having categories of asking what their preferred music is, what their preferred instruments are. And then, as we also do the study, we can compare that with new things that we introduce, right? And when we introduce those things, right, we might have a client that's never seen a crystal bowl before, right? But they know what a piano or a guitar or all these other things are. So they'll know that those things exist and that those things are something that they can choose from. During the study, we can also start to introduce some other things, find if they like those preferences, right? Does that now become a preferred preference? Or is it something that isn't for them, right?
Cool. It's interesting. There's a research project that was done a few years ago where they actually found that if someone likes the style of music, they get a positive response. And if they don't like it, they get a negative response. If someone loves death metal, they get a positive response, right? And so it's the interesting thing about a lot of sound healing sounds is it bypasses that judgment part because people don't know what the hell to think of it, right? So it will bypass that, and that's really can be really cool. Although there's a big difference between crystal bowls playing and doing little harmonies and stuff versus music. And that's a huge difference that I think a lot of people respond. There's different responses. It's really a totally different response. It's stable, consistent tones versus a melody with a rhythm, right? Which actually has all the musical components. Sometimes I really prefer music to crystal bowl. When I'm listening to my Pandora station, when a Tibetan bowl song comes on, I like it, but I often skip it, right? I mean, I shouldn't say that, but.
Well, it just depends on the mood you're in, right?
Right. I mean, they got their different components. So that's a big difference right there. So that's, I think that's down the line to figure out, but I'm really excited because where I'm headed, where I'm excited to head, where we'll say everybody here, hopefully, is what music is best for each of the 11 systems.
Can I show you this? I have to show you this thing that I have. It's talking about, it's that chakra meditation, talks about the systems, talks about planets, and the note and the mantra that goes with it.
You want to share your screen?
Yeah, is that possible?
Okay. Sure.
And then I can share this with everyone too, so you can see it for yourselves. Let's see. This one. Yeah.
I
so
you're just really grounded and totally scientific to me.
No, I'm a bridge, man. You're talking about wanting to integrate this into the medical field. I'm both. It's awesome.
I love it.
I did all this work when I was in New York performing, but that's a whole other thing. So basically, so I did this starting with Saturday. And what's interesting is these aren't in order because the notes weren't actually in order of necessarily our chakras with the days of the week. So Saturday is C. You're getting into your circulatory and reproductive systems, so you've got, and then color associated with it as well, right? Mm-hmm. So that's why I have this here.
Cool. It's really cool. I'm sorry.
Yeah. What I found interesting is when you look at, if you start from Sunday to Saturday, when I was going Sunday to Monday, it's B to A is the number, which is a 7th, right? And then Monday to Tuesday was a 5th, and Tuesdays, Wednesdays was a 3rd. So it goes 7, 5, 3, 5, 3, 5, 7. Going up. Yeah.
I think a lot of issues are because people are focused on one note or frequency instead of the whole spectrum. And this really brings them through the whole spectrum. So I like that.
Right. And then also, as we were talking about with people's home notes, maybe it's C sharp, maybe it's, any of these semitones in between, right? So this is just sort of the basic frequency that we talk about, C, D, E, F, G. But eventually, as we do that specific work for each person and finding those frequencies that are more attuned to them, this becomes their C for that Saturday, or their, maybe they shift to D, maybe they start on D, you know.
I have to tell you that I subscribe more to frequencies for chakras than notes. Notes don't
And
resonate.
I would certainly say there's no evidence to support that the chakras go by the C major scale. And the only study that I've seen on chakras and their notes tended to disprove that theory.
Yeah. And there's so many other systems. In China, they have it where it's musical fifths, right? Or you can have, in Tibet, A was the root. And around here, I believe your root chakra is, everybody's is different. It's your actual home note. Okay, one more thing.
This is just something just to jump off to find those specific frequencies for different people, right?
Cool. I think it's great.
Can I add a few things? Oh,
Uh-huh.
sorry.
Go
A few
ahead.
things in the chat. Somebody's contributing nature sounds that
Yeah, we have
reconnecting.
that.
Do we have
We
that
have
there?
that in there. Yeah, we went through that. Yeah.
Okay. And Could I add? Oh, sorry. And then, do you have? Are you planning to do research on certain frequencies, on the effectiveness of different?
Well, we had that. Yeah, we started with that. We started with right here, all the different frequencies versus timbres versus intervals. Remember, so we have
So is that
coherent
going to be
frequencies.
part of the
low fre-
research?
Yeah, well, I'm more I don't, because single frequencies, individual frequencies, I don't know that that's really the way to go right now, as opposed to music and because I think music for anxiety seems to be, although, okay, actually, that's not, I'm just contradicting myself because I was just wanting to get to the last thing here, and that is brain. Maybe there's a certain frequency that will create calm when you activate a certain tubule in the brain. There's people that are creating certain states of consciousness. So that could totally be the way to go. But then we find, how effective are delta, theta, alpha, and beta tuned to the person? So we're actually working directly from the brain. And what about brain maps, where you have theta on one side, delta on the other? They did brain maps of Dalai Lama trained meditators, and we can entrain people into a state of compassion with electrodes all over the brain, or into a state of love, or ultimately like gratitude or universal love, right? I mean, the potential here is really huge.
We haven't talked about cranial sacral therapy, and I think it might have something to do with these brain waves, but I'm not sure. There's a
Well, it's a very specific rhythm, and that rhythm is tied into the brain waves and the heart rate. So I think it's
and I've taken people from they get this really high frequency and they get into this long tide, and it's puts them off into la la land. I'm wondering if that's the theta or.
Well, but definitely around theta with cranial sacral and both Reiki, that tapping into that life force frequency range, if you will. I think that cranial sacral and Reiki could go together in that energy field of, really getting people into the theta brainwave state.
So what we can do is I'll put out these items and send it out to you, and we'll kind of like do a vote, right? And get comments as to what we could see if we could start pinning down which of these we would want to do the research on, and see what we come up with, and then I can present it in the next meeting and see if we can even pin it down and actually say, okay, let's do this one thing, or let's slate these 3 or 5 things to do, and when the funds come in, who wants to do which one? That sound good?
Very cool.
Shannon, did you want to share something in particular about that person's research?
Oh, Dr. Michael Thought, I was just going to briefly say that I was invited to a lecture on some research that was presented at U of T last year. They have an actual health and music department at U of T by Dr. Michael Thought, and 2 very, very excellent presentations on very simple studies, but I'll try to just briefly. And they used video and a lot of other data to show. One was they were dealing with people with dementia who could not remember their names unless they were sung to in their, like, my name is Michael and I am, and then they remembered it only if they were sung to and sung back. And he's got this awesome data on it. It was miraculous watching that. The second thing he showed was, the doors in places that are timed, you press the button, the handicap button, and it opens. He had done this genius stuff, and he showed all of the video on Parkinson's patients. Literally could not time their entrance. They could not get in the handicap accessible door until they started playing just ambiently a rhythm. I don't know what the rhythm was, and they smoothly went through. So there's research existing that we can already start to either modify or look into, but it's awesome. There's a ton up here at U of T. I just wanted to mention that because it was really exciting.
Shannon, did you see Michael Tout?
I put it in the chat earlier.
So anybody that can spend time working on things like that, that's really great. I've kind of got a lot going on. So anybody that would volunteer to do these research and bring it to the group and send it to me, then we'll collate it. That's something we do have. We got interns and such like that. So really just be really grateful for any help.
Are we going to break off into teams at some point? Because I'm actually, I think you said Michael Tout, but I'm trying to find it. It was so long ago.
He did, or she did.
Yes, T-H-A-U-T.
Yes, he's my professor.
Yeah, University of Toronto, T-H-A-U-T, yeah.
Yeah, so the neurologic music therapy program, that's his whole thing. They have an institute.
Yeah,
right?
It's awesome. It's
yeah.
Yeah.
So I am an NMT. So you and I ought to connect around his work because that's.
I'm not an NMT, but I love to talk to you. Yeah.
Well, I know, and that's why I was like, this would be a good sort of section of research and whatever to maybe work on together, if you're open to that, because I'm already using those protocols. That specific thing is called rhythmic auditory stimulation.
Yeah, and the stuff that was you who showed that. I don't have my glasses. Did you show those slides earlier? Was that you?
The one.
Yeah, so I know a ton about that too. So maybe we're going to meet on a zillion levels. Okay, so that's great.
Yeah, I think when you find those rhythms are tuned to the brain, like we were talking about before, it's going to be way more effective. When you can actually do a sweep and find what rhythm actually brings the brain into the most coherence, that those rhythms are going to be even better. Right. I mean, consistent rhythms, there's a lot of research about consistent rhythms being helpful. We used it in our exercises for the children. But when you tune it to a person, that's really cool. So if you could have like a really simple device to be able to find their natural rhythm, then it's like it could be really effective.
You basically just use a metronome that you can tap to them. I mean, that's part of the protocol is finding their walking pattern. And then adjusting that if it's, with Parkinsonism, it's the gait, right? They have that shuffling gait. So how do we elongate that gait, which is partly why they're freezing when they get to that door jam, right? They're literally not able to make the longer stride.
Okay.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay. So, oh boy. So this is cool. So what we're thinking is the procedure is to do this for different issues. I want to do depression. The big one I want to get to that might take a couple of meetings is pain. And that's going to take some medical research as to how the pain happens in different areas, because I'm really excited about that, especially since I had kidney stones a couple of months ago, right? But I just see that the potential to overcome pain with sound and vibration. If we find the frequency of nerves, we could do dramatic pain removal. And this is such a major problem for so many people, right?
Frequency
and all the
of
different
what?
types of, I'm sorry?
Frequency of what did you say?
Nerves.
Okay.
Yeah. So so that's what we're thinking is, and then what we'll probably have to do is you know, maybe we'll spend the beginning of the next meeting pinning down what people said about which project to work on here, because what we need is more of a how the to pin down the hypothesis, you know, for each of these areas that here. So if anybody's really interested and wants to head up one of these projects, right, or has any ideas just to contribute to it, we can talk about that at the beginning of the next meeting, and then we'll choose what we're going to work on. In our class, we just did a whole class on depression that was very cool. On Monday in the degree program, we're actually doing grief, which is a really big one, right? So, so I'll put it out there. Maybe if I don't just choose something, I'll send you a list of different possibilities as we go. How's that sound?
Did you think about diabetes? I'm interested in that for diabetes. It's so many diabetes.
Yeah, there's very little frequencies. I haven't come across any frequencies other than for the circulatory system for diabetes. And a lot of people have asked about that. And it could be really, really cool.
I think it would be interesting also to bring in some perspective of Chinese medicine and the organ system. Because, you know, it is, but, you know, we're talking then, you know, diabetes is very endocrine based and hormonal system, very spleen and pancreas related. So we can use the organ system in our research with specific frequency use.
Cool. Yeah, if you have any ideas to inform on that, that's, yeah, excellent. Excellent. Okay. So, okay. Any last thoughts before we do one last little tiny meditation? Well, thank you all for your presence and your help here. Let's do this. Let's send a sound of love to everybody on the planet that is experiencing anxiety right now. Go ahead and unmute. Take care.
Thank you.
Bye.